everyone, I'm back with a part 3 to my previous video on GamingMagic13's Danganronpa 3 series, Danganronpa 3, The End of My Sanity. Obvious disclaimers being that I'm not going to be talking about everything here, including but not limited to stuff I agreed with and had nothing to add to, or dumb, nonsensical points. I could often ignored a lot of straight garbage here, more than I usually do. Honestly, it's just funny. He's just complaining about quite literally anything that he can find. I, on the other hand, am not interested in wasting my own time like this. But anyways, lastly, there will most likely be some things I screw up in these videos. None of it was intentional, and if necessary, I will correct them. So this episode took a bit longer for me to make because not only do I have way better things to do than to watch these videos, I also decided that instead of going through the series as he goes through it, I would go ahead and rewatch the entire dub version of Danganronpa 3 first, and then rewatch the episode as I'm going through it here. I think I realized after making a video and watching the next episode that I was kind of forgetting a few details since I hadn't sat down and watched the entire series in some time. But I'd already seen it enough times to be able to accurately rely on my memory for most of this. Hopefully this will help make my videos a bit more accurate. I've also put a bit more time into this video and tried with a varying success rate to really get my points much clearer in my script. But one little thing before I begin. During these videos, he's using the exact same reaction clips of Wreck-It Ralph pointing, some Toy Story clips, Incredibles clips, some guy from some cartoon or anime that I didn't watch moving his hand, and some other dude from some TV series I didn't watch, and a few others. This, while slightly annoying, is not something I would care about just by itself. But he says some of these same lines over and over again like a broken record. Who wrote this? Because fuck you, that's why. Oh no, they're not. Or other lines like this. And it is seriously insanely annoying. It's like he's just relying on the exact same formula and writing all his videos the exact same way to try and make the writing process just a bit faster. Which, sure, whatever. Do what you want. It's your video. But oh my god, seriously? Do you not have anything better to say? No kind of different or unique way to say the same thing over and over again? None of it is warranted either. He just says whatever at whatever scene he just didn't like the logistics of because he's shocked that fiction rarely ever resembles real life to a T, or I don't know. He also likes to do this thing where he says, let's see if they can go 5 seconds without screwing everything up or whatever. Then he plays the clip and stops at the first line and gives the dumbest spitfire criticism he can think of. My guess is he's trying to pretend like he gave the show a chance. You really couldn't please this guy with a series if you tried. That's if he keeps all his criticism consistent, which he very much doesn't, but I don't want to get too sidetracked here. How are people supposed to watch this and agree with it? All of it? I'll grant you that the Danganronpa lore and its world building is pretty messy in general, but you've got to be one hell of a basement living hater to not see anything at all wrong with these videos, even if you dislike Danganronpa 3. This guy is just one hell of a commentator, straight up misinformation, quite literally everywhere. I don't mean to say this for the nth time, but he does all of this with the exact same super angry tone, which I think is really the nail in the coffin of how bad all of these videos really are. You really just can't come on the internet and have any sort of civil discussion, can you? You'd rather just be mad at next to nothing about a series you have negative understanding of. Oh well, it gives me something entertaining to work on, I guess.
Here we go again. This episode opens with a fucking Monokuma Theater recap sequence. No, I'm not kidding, we're actually doing this because not only do these writers have absolutely no faith in your intelligence, they also think you have the memory of a tadpole. Although maybe they just assume that everyone's memory is equivalent to the strength of their own.
Have you never heard of a recap episode before? Usually it's not explained by a character, but rather just a bunch of scenes of the main plot put together. They just did it with Monokuma because he's the mascot of the series. It's just supposed to be charming and funny. Really not that big of a deal. It is pretty ironic for you to complain about a bad memory, but I've already talked about that enough, so I won't bother just yet.
Old guy tries to get Matt to calm down, but he says nah and throws a chair at the chairman. But also, how the fuck are you able to pick up and throw an office chair with one arm?
Have you looked at him? Give it about 2 or so minutes and you'll be able to see him better. He's a boxer. World champion at like 18 or whatever. He's ridiculously strong. How are you not able to see this out yourself? Are you even trying?
Not because he somehow misses his shot. How?
Because Tengen moved and deflected the chair to the pipe? Duh, did you watch the scene? I'll give you that it's a bit hard to tell because of how fast it moved, but if you're going to complain about little stuff like this, then you could at least bother to try and figure out yourself before you just open your mouth and spew nonsense.
Furthermore, why do you even have an explosive device on hand ready to go? Why do you have a remote ready to trigger it? How did the Future Foundation let you into the building with this stuff? And again, why did you have this? Did you expect that you were going to need to blow someone up today? Oh, whatever.
Gee, I really wonder, why would someone living in a world nearly destroyed where the dangerous remnants are active and ready would ever need something like an explosive aggressive to defend himself. He probably keeps them on his person at all times in case of extreme circumstances, like the one they're in right now.
They blow up Nala and so she fucking dies. Oh wait, no she doesn't. She's perfectly fine for some reason. I guess those pills also made her immune to bombs blowing up right fucking next to her. Also, this is Veruca's reaction to the initial explosion. Fucking bitch! So then they panic when they see the Nala survived and Veruca sets off another bomb despite the fact that the first one clearly did fuck all, but whatever. Surely when something demonstrably fails the first time, it's bound to work the second time. Especially—
Let's say you're trying to kill someone with a knife. You stab them once and they survive. Do you A, try to stab them again, or B, give up and run away? If you guessed A, then unless you're this guy, you'd be correct. Now that person is wounded and you already have the knife in your hand and are close enough to harm them. Why back off now? Now, to put this in the context of this scene, the traps are already set up, so what if they don't end up working? It's still worth a try. Not as if Easy OA is limited on supply or anything.
And then she climbs the mountain of rubble in her wheelchair? What? Let me say that again in case you thought you misheard me. McQueen is able to drive up a giant mountain of rubble with nothing but her wheelchair. Why does your wheelchair have the traction of an all-terrain vehicle?
Why not? Not like it wouldn't be necessary at a time like this with rubble everywhere. Similar, if not worse, to what's in Toa City as we see in Ultra Despair Girls. The wheelchair was most likely developed by Monica given the ridiculous function it has that connect directly to the robot itself. How many more common sense arguments do I have to give before I start seeing some reasonable complaints, or even just complaints with some sort of backing at all? I feel like I could just accomplish the same thing with my videos if I just played a recording of me saying, play the games, watch the series, and think about what you just said for a second on repeat. I know it's only episode 4, but I've been able to come up with a few better complaints than this guy. I actually like Danganronpa 3.
So our crew Matt is still standing around like an asshole instead of just throwing the chair and getting it over with. But then he
So first, he was mad at Ruruka for triggering the bomb since it didn't work the first time. And now he's mad at Sakakura for not throwing the chair after it didn't work the first time. And while there's steam in the air, maybe he just doesn't want to put his strength into an object when he doesn't even know where his target is. You really don't have to think so much about little scenes like this. Maybe then you wouldn't contradict yourself so often.
And then 1 second later, something comes shooting at him through the fog and just barely misses him, and it is revealed that the old guy was the one who fired the shot? What? Why is Inspector Chelmy over here so skilled with firing weapons? How did you even manage to see through the steam?
I don't think Tengen necessarily knew exactly where Sakakura was standing. It's more likely that he just shot where the noise was coming from a few seconds earlier. He gave an educated guess, if you will. Really not that serious.
And Kyoko, but then John Lasseter has to fuck it all up and make the whole thing about him with a woe is me speech. Oh, wah, all I do is try to help people, but it always backfires. Wah, cry me a river.
This is one of the things that becomes a bit more important down the line regarding Mitarai's character. This scene has a reason, and you'll get a bit more context after episode 9 of Despair. I won't say the entire thing here because I'll just end up restating it when the series actually shows it, but to summarize a bit of it here, Mitarai gets upset because of how often his attempts at helping people just backfire completely, like the gigantic mess with his anime. You don't have to like him, but seriously, would you rather his entire episode 11 shenanigans come completely out of nowhere, as opposed to someone who consistently feels bad for his basically useless and guilty over what happened being pushed over the edge to help in the best way he knows how?
But then Hina and Kyoko were like, oh come on, you're not so bad. Yeah, you're totally cool and all. Why am I supposed to care about you? You've been nothing but a whiny little shit this whole time and have had absolutely no character development whatsoever. I couldn't—
For the love of God, just watch this Despair arc. Watch the rest of this series for Christ's sakes. It's the fact that the ultimate imposter is disguised as Mitarai with zero context in the slightest not make you curious as to where the real Mitarai is? And why exactly would he be disguised as this loser and not someone else like Byakuya, since real Byakuya is no longer an option? How come you can't just stop for a second and think about there being more context or something before you just jump into the dumb complaints?
By being sliced with a samurai sword, I see his plot armor still as strong as ever.
Almost as if Munakata wanted him to survive. Did you even bother to listen to anything he said to Makoto?
Let's go. Let's see what he has to say. Surely we can make it at least 3 sentences in before you stop making sense. He begins by saying that anybody willing to attempt a rescue from Makoto is not to be trusted, and stop! Hina and Kyoko are his friends, you overcooked pancake fuck. Of course they're willing to attempt a rescue for their friend. And also, what happens if every single person in the Future Foundation is willing to attempt a rescue because they don't believe your bullshit and realize he's innocent? Or how about they just don't believe in executing him even if they do believe he's guilty? Are all of your friends not to be trusted anymore?
Fucking idiot. He thinks Makoto's guilty. Of course he would say that.
And that's exactly the problem. All of the drama in this stupid show is predicated on the shoddiest of foundations. It all runs on the idea that these characters would believe for even half a second that Makoto did something morally reprehensible. Even if—
So what? Hina and Kyoko are his friends, so they can't be trusted. Do you think that Sakakura and Munakata have been trying to kill both of them for no reason? As for the entirety of Future Foundation coming— What? No, I'm sorry, but Makoto did betray the Future Foundation. Like I've already said, he aided and abetted the enemy. This is an indisputable fact, and I cannot stand the way that this guy just keeps pretending that it never happened. Future Foundation told him not to do it, that he'd be committing treason, and yet he did it anyway. Future Foundation doesn't trust his intentions because they have little reason to believe otherwise of him because they have nothing to base it off of. Did they even watch the Danganronpa 2 Killing Game? unlikely. I know you'd rather just chalk everything up to bad writing instead of trying to think about a show critically, but the computers and such that deal with the Neo World program are on Jabberwock Island itself. There was never any intention to broadcast the program anywhere else, so why bother setting it up? My guess is that the results of the unbrainwashed ex-remnants fighting against despair were supposed to speak for themselves. Makoto, the person running the show, didn't prepare for a blunder like a Junko AI, so he doesn't know how to fix the problem of nobody believing him. I've already talked about this a multitude of times, and I don't want to have to keep repeating myself over and over again, so I'll just leave it at that. Right after this, he drives up his video's runtime by making an analogy with the show Suits that I didn't watch, and the comparison he makes is not awful necessarily, but just mediocre and honestly a waste of time. For one, practicing law without a license is not even remotely close to being in the same ballpark as hiding terrorists heavily responsible for destroying the entire world. Basically, his comparison is that some guy fights for justice very well, but he does it illegally and gets in trouble because he doesn't have a license, and while you sided with the guy who broke the law, you can understand the other side because at the end of the day, he did break the law. My understanding is that he's trying to tie this back to Danganronpa 3 because to try and format these two statements the same way, he believes that Makoto wanted to spread hope, but he did it by hiding the people responsible for the destructions and fixing them, and he gets in trouble because he hid the bad guy. He's saying that the difference is that you can understand why Murakata and so is fighting against him. I can see how he's coming to this conclusion, but it's still incorrect. I think he's misunderstanding Munakata's mindset and his extremist beliefs. The rest of Future Foundation don't necessarily disagree with him, but rather are mostly indifferent, with a few exceptions. But they aren't willing to put themselves in harm's way to defend someone else, especially in a killing game, especially against this guy. Munakata wants to kill Makoto because he wants to eliminate every single possible host of despair. Makoto is one of those possible hosts. He doesn't care if he kills what ends up being an innocent person if there's even a slight chance that they're on the side of despair. I think the thing here that this guy is just not getting is the trauma that one gets from such an extreme set of events like this and such a wild change over the course of probably a few weeks or even days at best. Beyond him just not getting what's happening here, this is the biggest problem with his analogy. Suits is assumably set in the real world without the presence of a war. Danganronpa 3 Future Arc is set in the already destroyed world where worldwide landmarks are replaced with Monokumas and just about everything is in shambles. You went from living your life as expected and working towards your goals to having to uproot and redirect everything and either straight up die or learn how to fire a gun and make other people die. Is Munakata's thought process rational? No, not at all. Since when has the human brain ever done anything rationally as a response to extreme trauma? In order to be a psychologist to know this stuff, he sees despair bad, despair destroy everything and kill people, so his solution is kill all despair so there's no more left. This belief is so strong that he's willing to kill any and all potential unconfirmed hosts just so he can be entirely sure that there is no more despair left. That's why he's fighting against Makoto. You don't have to side with him or believe he's in the right like that girl in Suits or whatever, just have to understand the way his mind has gone to work as a response to these events. That's the clear difference here.
It turns out that the reason why the Steel Samurai is going to kill Makoto isn't actually because he doesn't trust him, it's because he doesn't trust the remnants of despair. Because, you see, the attacker could simply set up a patsy to be framed as the attacker and then subsequently killed off, and then consciously choose to not kill anyone for the next round, thus leading everyone to believe that the game has stopped. Then the attacker would be hailed as a hero by the Ultimate Hope himself, and permanently entrenched in the Future Foundation. And thus, the Steel Samurai has decided to murder everybody. This monologue broke my fucking brain. Second of all, and more importantly, why hasn't the attacker just done that yet?
He spends a lot of time saying that Munakata's talk about killing everyone is bad, but he doesn't actually say a lot about why he thinks it's bad. I cut off most of it because if I left it in, I'd just have an hour-long video where he said, "This show sucks," over and over again. But anyway, why would they do this? Seems like the attacker's goal here is to kill everyone off, not to be thought of as a hero. They're part of the Future Foundation. They'd likely already have at least some of that credibility. It'd be a waste of time to try and double down on it. And the traitor is Tengen, who planned for every leader of Future Foundation to be dead bar Meteorite. Munakata is saying this because, like I just said, he's an extremist. He doesn't want to live with this, even the slightest possibility that there is despair living among them.
Appropriately tells the Steel Samurai to fuck all because his plan makes absolutely no sense and he's gone mad at the idea of murdering everyone, and then he says,
Was Enoshima defeated without sacrifice?
"What the motherfucker? Have you lost your mind? Is your brain turned to raw sewage? This doesn't make any sense. The people from the first game didn't kill everyone else so they could all escape in one piece."
No, they didn't. But if they didn't die, none of the survivors would have been able to solve the mystery and escape. Yoko never would have gotten that master key had Sakura not help open the door before she died. If she had done that while she was alive, Monokuma would have killed Sakura for breaking the rules. And Junko only opened another 4 after each trial. If nobody died, they would have been stuck on floor 1, which has hardly anything on it. Also, Sakura sacrificed herself. Even if you say that none of the murders prior to Chapter 4 count as a sacrifice, Sakura quite literally killed herself partly to end all conflict between the group. She says this in her note. She sacrificed herself so there would be no more murders. Seriously, did you play the game? He wastes no time in telling the series to, can you try please? Or whatever, as if he's putting in any sort of effort of his own here. Can you try? Maybe finish the series, or better yet the games, before you just say whatever word vomit you can think of first.
McQueen calculated the safest route to get from where they were to this room, and what? What do you mean safest route? Do you have a Waze installed in that fucking chair too? And if so, then that still makes no sense. How do you calculate the safest route in this building? What are you using to determine that? Are you planning on there being random Indiana Jones traps scattered?
Have a map of the building and go the ways that most people don't bother to go? Like, going to a store the back way is usually much safer, albeit longer than going to the highway, even if you don't bother to check the traffic. Go by the rooms that nobody uses, and thus someone might have trouble navigating properly. Why are you just nitpicking everything you manage to come across?
Guy tells John Lasseter that Kyoko needs an escort so we can keep being relevant to the plot. Oh my god, fuck off with this shit! Stop stapling your shitty new characters onto the people we actually care about. As if Kyoko would ever need anybody to take care of her. You can take that bullshit and shove it up your ass.
No, Kyoko does not need an escort or any sort of protection. But if Midori doesn't come out of this alive, then Tengen's plan is for nothing. Leaving Midori alone isn't a guarantee that he'll be safe because he's not very strong, but having someone go with him, like Kyoko, makes his survival much more likely. And if anyone would manage to get out of this mess, it would be Kyoko. Having Midori, and only Midori, go with her allows for him to possibly be able to know at least some of what she knows, or have easier access to her notebook whenever she dies, thus making his possible escape much easier. He's not necessarily telling Midori to protect Kyoko, he's asking Kyoko to protect Midori. I figured this would be obvious.
Comes around the corner, witnesses our trio of heroes running away. Wait, what the fuck? How? The last time we saw you 2 minutes ago, you were tied up against the wall. You're telling me you not only already regained consciousness, but somehow managed to untie yourself?
He's a boxer. He has really strong arms. Do you think that tying up his arms is gonna last all that long? They just did it because they didn't have a better option. He regained consciousness pretty quickly because, well, again, he's a boxer, and his body is probably used to that stuff. Might just be out of practice or something.
Fuck you then! Remember 10 minutes ago when you tried to blow her the fuck up and you were thrilled when you thought it worked? And now you're like, oh my god, why was he trying to kill us? Bitch, you've been nothing but a little shit to her this entire time!
You know that Psycho physically attacked her first, right? Psycho turned this into a physical argument and Ruruka and Izuyoi fought back. Yes, Ruruka is grasping at straws here, but she's also in a life-threatening situation against someone doped up on insane level steroids. Ruruka can't win a physical fight like this.
So immediately, and then someone's a fucking missile launcher out of her wheelchair? What? I can't, what in the hell is the fuck's my watching? Missile launcher wheelchair? How do you?
I don't know. Maybe you should ask the robotics genius girl who constructed all these different kinds of Monokumas and all those other giant robots that we fight at the end of each Ultra Despair chapter that probably made this wheelchair. Just a thought.
It turns out she was actually a robot being controlled by Monica fucking Tawa? What the fuck? Why did you bother with all these stupid left turns if you were a robot that literally could not have been poisoned? Nobody.
Well, she still has a forbidden action, and the wristband makes a noise when the forbidden action is triggered, and she spends most of her time with someone else. Also, she's a kid. Maybe she just wanted to play a little game and have some fun and see how long she could last or whatever. Who even cares? And thus ends Future Arc Episode 4. I think his main problem with this is he's taking a series that isn't supposed to be taken seriously. Both the sub and the dub have a lot of stupid lines that don't make sense. Who cares? All the games had them too, especially the second game with most of Nagito's dialogue along with Akane's, and the first game with Yasuhiro and Toko, not to mention Ultra Despair Girls. Junko's entire existence, motivations, personality, nearly everything about her is a complete joke. That's the point. It's not as if Danganronpa doesn't have anything to be taken seriously or points where they actually decide to take a topic seriously, but these characters are currently in a class trial where they have to discover a murder, or every single person except for the said murder will die, and they still have time to make loser jokes in between the dialogue. We're nearing the climax of the series and at the 5th chapter of Trigger Happy Havoc, where the story is really starting to pick up, and you start the trial by having to convince Yasuhiro that the Kyoko standing literally right there is not a ghost. Nothing here has ever been serious, and of course you'll get annoyed when you treat it as such. If you're a person who doesn't like media unless it takes itself seriously, then that's fine. I have nothing against that, but Danganronpa is clearly not as serious for you and not one you should have bothered with. I'm not trying to tell you the media you can and can't watch, but there's no need for you to come and bitch on the internet about a series that you aren't the target audience of. It's like the middle-aged dudes on the internet who complained about Turning Red. Obviously you hated it. It wasn't made for you. It was made for preteen girls. Danganronpa wasn't made for miserable people. Why do you think the blood is pink? It's not for censorship. Kodaka said it himself it was to further the psychopop elements of the game. While I will say that Danganronpa 3's future arc arc does take itself more seriously than anything else in the franchise, it's still Danganronpa media, it's still stupid. Basically, my point here is that you're not supposed to take Danganronpa seriously, and doing so is missing the entire point. As for this fair arc for, yeah, whatever. This is an episode involving Nagito. Expecting anything to make sense is kidding yourself. But anyway.
My hero would submit photos, Among Us would, well, you know, and so on and so forth. Only now I'm confused because how exactly is someone like Sonya supposed to be tested on her talent? She's the ultimate princess. How does one test how good of a princess you are? How does one test how good of a Yakuza leader you are? Does Chiaki have to compete in an esports tournament? And how in the name of Monokuma is Nagito supposed to be tested? Does he roll
Sonya is not just some random member of the royal family. They didn't just select her for being the heir to a throne. If you bother to play the free time events, you know that Sonya knows 30 foreign languages, economics, international law, diagnostic medicine, and probably a lot more than that. They don't elaborate on it much, but my guess is that they test these characters to make sure they can keep up their skills. So Nagito would just have to prove he's lucky or whatever, and Fuyuhiko would have to keep up his Yakuza skills, and I mean, Chiaki's pretty obvious.
the last exams you're ever going to take at the academy? They're just supposed to be a progress check. Something to test the things you've already learned. When you take your freshman year midterms in college as a computer science major, you aren't going to be tested on machine learning or data mining or how to create an operating system or the 7 layers of an OSI model. You're going to be tested on basic things, you know, the fundamentals of programming.
Why are you talking about how American universities works in the context of a Japanese high school? What makes you think they're going to function in the same way at all? Even ignoring that you're talking about schools on completely different continents, you don't think that a school that focuses primarily on the talents a student has is going to have exams that work very differently compared to a real-life university, especially when the students already excel at these talents? You wouldn't ask a master-level programmer to program you a temperature converter, you ask them to show them some of their newer work and explain it to make sure that they're still focusing on their talent. The Hope Speak staff already know the capabilities of these students prior to their entrance, otherwise they wouldn't have been scouted.
Fuckers play the games, because Nagito would never, ever do this. Do you guys remember the second game, where he was constantly testing the other students to see if they were even worthy of being called ultimates in the first place? Deliberately withholding vital information about a case to see if the others were smart enough to figure things out for themselves? No.
Yeah, not really. First of all, while I will grant you that some of the behavior that Nagito exhibits doesn't exactly line up perfectly with what he does in the games, expecting people to act exactly as they would in a normal setting within a literal killing game is ridiculous. And at this point, he actually knows these people, unlike in the killing game. Also, making them prove their talents by withholding trial information? What? If this is how you understand Nagito's character on your own, then I'm not going to waste my own words and fight a losing battle to try and baby walk you on how to do it correctly. But Nagito idolizes talent, real talent, and he wants to see that talent excel to the best of its ability, and he doesn't think that can happen in an environment where the students don't feel motivated. Hope Seek was built to raise hope in the nation's future. And I think Nagito and Hope can speak for itself. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Wrote that in the script. Also, why are you asking one of the students for a laxative? Why don't you just go to the damn pharmacy, you twit? Then Veruca shows
Nagito? Go to the pharmacy of untalented normies like him when you've got the super high school level pharmacist right there? Please, be for real.
How could you possibly think the school is going to be okay with this? You're literally creating a steroid people can use to enhance their performance. Surely the people of this academy aren't so stupid that they won't see a problem here, right?
Do you think Hope's Peak cares about any of that? They admitted Mukuro and Fuyuhiko and Peko and Imposter and Celeste, and I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't know anything of Genocider. Hope's Peak is above the law. They couldn't care in the slightest about what any of these students do.
He decides to...
Might as well leave it to chance. My luck being what it is, why not?
Are you fucking kidding me? You're gonna leave which drug you take up to chance. You are going to leave which drug you inject into your body up to chance.
Are you being for real? How many times do we have to ask if you even bother to watch this series? Nagito is not planning to take this drug. He's planning to give it to the judges to postpone the exams. And second, this is Nagito. He left cleaning duty up to chance. He'll leave this up to chance. He relies on his luck a ton all throughout the series, even at times when he very much shouldn't. It's part of his character.
Turns out that Nagito has planted bombs in the ceiling above the gym where the exams are being held. What the actual fuck is wrong with you? How does anyone like this character? He's gonna blow up the damn school if the exams aren't postponed.
Well, for one, Nagito is bad shit insane and wanted the exams delayed. As for why people like this character, what? You're saying this about Nagito, one of the most popular characters in the entire series? And no, it's not because all Danganronpa fans are bumbling idiots. Are you just incapable of liking a character that's not indisputably good? Nagito has a lot of layers and details to his character and explanations for a lot of his behavior. None of it is rational, but if you play his free time events, it gives you the stuff you might be looking for. Nagito is a well-written and very complex character, one of the best at that in the entire series. You don't have to agree with every single thing a character does to be able to appreciate them. If you're actually interested, which you clearly aren't, I'll redirect you to the hundreds of write-ups and videos on Nagito's character that explain him. I'm not asking you to like him, I'm asking, why the hell is this your level of media literacy? Analysis skill? Is there anything up that isn't filled with resentment at the volume levels of 100? What even?
Wait a minute, what the fuck? Your plan was to put the steroid in the food? That's not how that works. I thought you were gonna take it yourself so your skills would be enhanced. I didn't think—
So, I could be wrong here, but do we know for sure that the drug in particular was a steroid? It seems like they didn't really bother with the particulars about the drug, and rather just that it enhances the results of whatever it's in, so this is a waste of time.
Oh no, she opens the bag and realizes they got switched with Nagito, but then, and you're not gonna fucking believe this, the whole gymnasium, including the camera crew, is able to see inside her bag and realize that she has a detonator inside?
Well, no, one person says that she has a detonator, and the girl with the microphone hears her and then says that she has a detonator, and the entire gym hears the girl with the microphone.
Horrible person. We're not besties and we never will be.
Please, find the nearest tall building, introduce yourself to the edge, and then let gravity do the rest. I'm so lost. Who wrote this? What is happening? Did the writers think this made any sense? How do you have a character act like this, and then proceed to have them have this outburst?
Are you aware that people tend to have more than one personality trait? Are you aware that people tend to act more strongly in emotional situations? Ruruka outlashes at Psycho because she thinks that Psycho set her up to fail her exam, which would lead her to being kicked out of the school. Why would she act like she usually does after she's just been betrayed?
And try to resist the urge to die.
If he brought about a measurable result without direct intervention, that's a talent we don't dare let go.
What? If someone came into your school and started stabbing people to death, would you then go, yes, much talent, many wow, must recruit? What if the laws of physics applied in this universe and people actually died in that gym? Would you be praising his murderous talent then? Good.
Well, yeah. After all, Mukuro isn't enrolled under a false identity. Hope's Peak is above the law. They performed no lobotomy on Hajime, for God's sake. What makes you think that they cared about that some people died? They care about talent and only talent. It doesn't matter if they have to get stomped on in order to get to it. But that's it for this episode. He also says a lot about how Nagito should be the one who's expelled and not Ruruka or Psycho or Izuyoi, and in a perfect world, he'd be right, but I think it's important to note that those were the three people in front of this situation. The exams got media coverage, possibly being live footage, and it's possible that Nagito never actually made an appearance on television. It would be much easier for Hope's Peak to save face and throw those three students under the bus instead of trying to explain to the media there was actually a third party. And as I said, they wanted to keep Nagito around because they really want to be able to monitor his insane luck cycle, the one thing that Hope's Peak says they don't understand. Is this a good response to a situation like this? No. Is it possible to see why Hope's Peak decides to respond like this? Yes. Assuming that a school willing to perform a lobotomy on a teenage student like 16 years old or whatever is going to have any sort of decent moral standing is kidding yourself. Hope's Peak is corrupt, and that's a small part of what these things are trying to show you. Not directly tell you, but show you. This is called story writing.